Jen and I just want to do a few thank yous. You know, this event has a lot of moving parts. If you've got 10 venues and 70 authors, you got a lot of finagling you got to do. So we have some serious thank yous. One, of course, is the money. And the 5-cent bank, the Newburyport 5-cent Savings Bank, and the Institution for Savings come together. They have come together for 9 years to provide the founding sponsorships for this. And in addition to them, we have the Mass Cultural Council, the Cultural Councils of Amesbury, Georgetown, Merrimack, Newburyport, Newbury, and West Newbury. Is that 6?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's good. And then also Jack Cranberg, the Charles and Mary Ann Small Foundation, Bradford and Bigelow, the Newburyport Rotary Club also sponsor us. So let's give them a hand. Now, there's been one person who has been with us for 9 years, and she is the hotshot poet of Newburyport. She is Miss Powwow River Poets. She is the international queen of poetry. Her name is Rena Espillat. Finally, I learned how to say her name, but she is stepping down from the festival as a steering committee member and is going to be an advisor. So I would like for you to all thank her. Now, Jen has other, you have a little something to say. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, I will. All right. I'd like to first of all thank all the volunteers that helped us today. Every venue had people who took time out of their day to help us, and we could not get this done without them. So if you volunteered today, I'd love it if you could stand up, and we want to give you a round of applause. Now, I also want to thank our steering committee, because those are the people that work with us all year round to put this together. And you guys can stand up too, but I'm even going to read some names. So we have Michael Cameron, Linda Carpino, Cindy Dad, Rena Espillat, Elida Fry, Jessica Hilbin, Nana Kennedy, Karen Kruger, Sherry Frank, Shannon Schlegel, Debbie Zabo, and Sky Wentworth.
We're not shy. No, everybody else is shy about congratulating themselves, not us.
So, this evening, we are celebrating the Oprah impact on authors in publishing. And our distinguished panel includes Jenna Blum, New York Times and international bestseller, author of 2 novels, one of Oprah's top 30 women writers. Wow. We have Andre Dubus III, Newburyport Literary Festival 2014 honoree, and author of 6 books, many of them bestsellers, including The House of Sand and Fog, and which was an Oprah Book Club choice. We also have Wally Lamb, who has had 2 Oprah Book Club novels, and of course is a best-selling novelist, and Richard Russo, Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist, author of 6 novels and a collection of short stories, and his recent memoir, Elsewhere, which is another Oprah favorite. So,
Our moderator tonight, is Lucy Kaylin, who is the editor-in-chief of Oprah magazine. And I think that is such a wonderful thing, that because I truly believe that Oprah brought reading back to America, and anybody who can get people to read Faulkner, for pity's sake, an editor, but she's an author in her own right, and has received much praise from David Carey, who said she truly embraces and embodies Oprah's live your best life philosophy. So it is our great pleasure to present our panel and our moderator. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here at the Newburyport Literary Festival, an event that's been I've heard much about over the years, and it's very dear to the heart of my great good friend, Beth Welch. I think a mutual love of reading is one of the many things that drew us together more than 30 years ago. I remember when we went to a trip to Paris together in the 80s, and Beth showed up with 2 enormous suitcases, which I found curious, as Beth isn't exactly a clothes horse. And I had come to learn that one of the suitcases was packed full, dedicated entirely to novels, mostly Jane Austen, which she ritualistically rereads every year. Beth then is now, like perhaps many in the room knew, that health and happiness relied in large part on having great good reads close at hand at all times. Hasten to add that this was long before the day of Nooks and Kindles and iPads. Anyway, I come tonight bearing greetings from Oprah. She and I are both so delighted that the festival has decided to shine some of its light on our book club. Of all the game-changing, paradigm-shifting things that Oprah has done with her career, I dare say that getting untold millions to read more, to read books that they may never have heard of and may never have otherwise picked up is certainly way up there. Needless to say, it's been a huge boon to the publishing industry as well. Books that have borne the Oprah Book Club Selection sticker have sold, the estimates vary, but surely around 40 million copies. She loves to share the gift of reading because it has been such an important thing in her own life. Certainly, growing up in poverty in Mississippi and beyond, books were a great escape for her, but I think almost more so, they were this sort of massive plate glass window onto worlds of possibility and adventure and inspiration and excitement that all certainly, went to her achieving this incredible life of accomplishment and adventure that she has. I think it's really safe to say that we would not know Oprah as the Oprah Winfrey we know were it not for her passionate relationships with the works of Toni Morrison and Eckhart Tolle and Barbara Kingsolver and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, may he rest in peace, Maya Angelou and Mary Oliver and countless others. The idea of the book club was hatched in 1996 when backstage at the Oprah Winfrey Show, Oprah ran into an intern. Alice McGee was reading The Color Purple, and they got to talking and trading ideas about authors and favorite books and things like that. And it was Alice's idea that they bring that conversation to the air. And so they did. And with Jacqueline Richards' The Deep End of the Ocean, the club was launched. And it's been, I've lost count, but it's somewhere in the 70s, about 70 titles since. Oprah certainly is deeply involved, the last word on every book club choice. She chooses books much the same way she does everything, which is trusting her unerring sense of instinct. I really think a book has to pass the first page test with Oprah. She knows very quickly if it's a winner with her. I remember a couple of years ago when we sent her Ayanna Mathis's 12 Tribes of Hattie. We heard from her immediately, and she certainly hadn't finished it yet, but she loved those first couple of pages and said, this is special. And that was a book club pick as well. She reads all genres. I know that she and her great long-time friend Maria Shriver are trading poetry books back and forth constantly. My sense of it is that in terms of novels, she likes them to be big and meaty, and juicy things that she can sink her teeth into. I think the experience that she likes to have with reading is much like the experience she likes to have with her second favorite thing to do, which is having a bath. She loves to take baths. She likes these to be long, luxurious experiences. And funnily enough, she often likes to read in the bath, so you can imagine what a good time that is. And you know, she does like a good long book. And I was with her not so long ago when someone asked, well, how long, Oprah, does a book really have to be, you know, for you to like it? And she said, well, you know, I used to say it really should be, you know, at least 300 pages, you know, really get into it. She said, I don't say that anymore. She said, now I think 800 pages. So, sharing books through the book club, whether the Oprah Winfrey Show book club or the new iteration in print and digital online and elsewhere that we have now, has really been one of Oprah's greatest pleasures. It's always been sort of funny to me that could provoke controversy, but I guess these days almost anything can. As we all know, Jonathan Franzen determined that the book club was not rarefied enough for him until relented. But during the time of the Franzen flap, there was another Tweety thinker who decided to weigh in to concur that yes, it's just too cloying. I have to read what he said. There's something so relentlessly therapeutic, so consciously self-improving about the book club that it seems antithetical to discussions of serious literature. Literature should disturb the mind and derange the senses. It can be palliative, but it is not meant to be the easy, soothing one that Oprah would make it. Well, he lost me, it should. Not sure who's to say what literature should be or how we should react to it. Never mind that I know no one more willing to let her mind be disturbed by difficult, challenging material than Oprah. No worries, no matter. The point is, books are for all of us, and the joyous communal appreciation of them and of writers is a miraculous thing. I'm so grateful to both Oprah and to the Newburyport Literary Festival for allowing us to engage in exactly that way. I'm so delighted to be with this distinguished panel, and I suppose if the book club has made a big impact on readers' lives, I suspect it's made a big impact on writers' lives. Wally? I've heard tell of, emergency sessions with your publisher about how are we going to print 1 million more books real quick because you've just gotten selected, for meetings in the middle of the night, that kind of stuff. There's also a great laundry story. I'm hoping you can share it.
I certainly can. Oh, and I am to do that now.
You are on.
So my connection to Oprah comes about at least 4 years before the book club became a thing. It was 1992. My novel, She's Come Undone, had just come out on 4th of July weekend, and somewhere around, I don't know, August or September, it was probably August because I had a whopping, I think, 4-city book tour. And I got back.
That's pretty good for some of us.
Oh yeah. So anyway, I got back home, and I was putting clothes from the washer to the dryer, and my wife was putting supper on the table, and the kids were milling around, and my son Jared, who was about maybe 10 years old at the time, not famous for telephone manners, the phone rings, and he said, yeah, no, yeah, Dad! And so I go to the phone, and this woman says, hello, is this Wally? And I said, yes. And she said, what are you doing, Wally? And I said, I'm doing laundry. And then I hear on the other end, so I said, who is this? She says, this is Oprah Winfrey. I'm thinking to myself, thank God I didn't say it, but I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right, you're Oprah Winfrey and I'm Geraldo Rivera. It was just too good an invitation. So I begin, as I'm trying to not sound too much like an idiot, I'm pantomiming to my wife. And so we were playing this charades game, and she's saying, the Pope? No. Jenna says, no, better than the Pope.
Anyway, or certainly better than the Pope at the time.
So she said to me, she was teasing me, oh, you owe me 2 nights sleep. I stayed up 2 nights reading this book. And then she got a little bit more serious and she said, reading saved my life when I was a kid. And when I read a book that I love, I try to track down the author to say thanks. It was just this very sweet call. It really didn't have anything to do with the show. And so 4 or 5 years later, when there was an Oprah book club, I had no fantasies that she, would remember my book. But lo and behold, she calls and says it was going to be, She's Come Undone was going to be her next book pick. So, but that first call was always the cherry on top of that whole Sunday experience for me. And the first thing she said when she called back was, "Hi, Wally, are you still doing the laundry?"
Yes, you are.
And my wife, by the way, hates this when I tell this story because if she were here, she would say, "Yeah, he's done the laundry."
He's done the laundry once.
So a question for you, Richard. You're not an Oprah book club author, but you are relentlessly well-reviewed in our magazine and on our website. Tell me a little bit about what it means to be commercially successful. I know this writing a novel is certainly the deep and introspective and lovely ones that you do. It's a private and personal act. And then something happens, and then Oprah and her world likes it, and all of that stuff. Is there a conflict, or is that kind of a nice problem to have?
Yes, to both. I think one of the real blessings of my career has been, I think that my career has built in kind of manageable ways. When I was fresh out of graduate school and working on my first novel, there was a point at which when I was sending, or my agent was sending Mohawk out, which, I would have made a Faustian pact. If somebody had said, wearing a green felt suit, had come up to me and said, we're going to give you this book. It will be published and published well, but you'll never publish another. I would have taken that. I would have taken that. And Mohawk came out. It got a couple of good reviews. It was towed along because it was a vintage contemporary when those things were very new and very, very powerful, and the packaging was wonderful on them. And I was kind of towed along in the wake of Raymond Carver and Richard Ford and a bunch of other really wonderful writers. And so I kind of had a foot in the door, but it was a book that was published that year. And since then, up until Empire Falls, what happened was that with each book, I got more readers than the last book, but there was never anything earth-shattering like a call from Oprah. When you started with the laundry story, I expected that to be a soiled laundry story. So I never had anything like that happen to me. My career has been a kind of accretion up through Empire Falls, and of course the Pulitzer put not only that book but all of my backlists in a new. But I was old enough then. That was my sixth novel. I was old enough then and already working on a new book and had been at it long enough not to be paralyzed. Because I think that's the danger of commercial success, especially when it happens to you early, is that it has this really profound effect on you that it's not necessarily a good thing, because you have to face that blank page the next day, and the next day after you get a call from Oprah or you win a literary prize, you don't have any more talent that day than you did the day before.
That's right.
But the stakes are suddenly much higher.
That's right.
So I think it's both of those things. I mean, it's wonderful. You've got a validation now, and you You can go to your work with a certain amount of confidence that comes from someone recognizing, but also it's I mean, you want, when anything like that happens, you kind of want to be worthy of it.
That's right. Andre, when it happened for you, how old were you in the first one? I'm not even sure.
When Oprah called, I was 39 years old. But I've been writing for 18 years. And I published 2 books, and I was saying just earlier today, and 5 people had read them, and 4 of them were my mother. And my first book went to 39 publishers over about 5 years, and the second book went to almost 29 or 30 publishers, and the third book, which she picked, House of Sand and Fog, went to over 24 publishers over 2.5 years. So I was so used to no, and no, thank you, that I didn't quite take it in. I had actually just, my wife and I, because let me give you some idea of what that sticker on your book does. My first 2 books sold the way literary books do, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 copies. I mean, books that you study in college sell 3,000 to 5,000 copies out of the chute. House of Sand and Fog took off as an independent bookseller with these beautiful human beings called booksellers who run bookstores, were hand selling it. The first printing was 30,000 copies, and I told my editor at Vintage, she said, please don't, you're going to mortify yourself. I've never sold more than 3 books, please don't. And 6 months later, it sold 160,000 copies because of booksellers. So I didn't think you could get any better than that. And the day that I got 2 calls on the same day. The first call was, we're going back for the 9th printing of another 20,000 copies. And I thought, well, my God, can't get better. And then Alice McGee called. And I had just, because of the success of House Sand and Fog, we bought 2 acres of land, but I said, we'll never be able to build anything, but at least we have some land, we can have a cookout, make hot dogs, marshmallows, sit around, drink beer. But I had my hopes up, so I had estimated the price of a pump. We needed a sewage pump to get the sewage uphill. That's a good idea, but that's what we needed. And now that alone was $5,000, and I said to my wife, well, we're never going to have a house, but anyway. So then that night, I get a call from this lady with this Chicago accent. She says, I'm calling for my friend. She's very well known. And I'm cooking, and the kids are playing with Star Wars shit. And I'm thinking, okay, well, who's your friend? Well, she's from Chicago. And said, yeah, last I saw it was a big damn town. And I said, I'm cooking, I work in construction all day. She said, well, I said, who's your friend? She said, guess.
Studs her.
Yeah, I don't know. But I thought you were talking about my friend, because I have a friend in Chicago. I said, oh, are you my friend, what's your name, Rachel's friend? No, I'm not your friend's friend, I'm my friend's friend. Oh, who the hell's your friend's friend? I asked you, I'll give you a hint, she's very well known. Oh, Jesus, who else in Chicago? Al Capone, what do I know about that? So I'm stirring my sauce, and I'm drinking my cheap Merlot for my $10 jug. It took 2 weeks to drink it, and I'm just stirring, and then I had this vague sick feeling. I remember having the flu one day, and I remembered I watched that was my one Oprah show. Don't tell her, but I will not. And I remember Carpo Productions Chicago. I said, no way. Brett Locke, whose book Joel was picked, he said, expecting Oprah to pick your book, because she just picks any off the shelf, is like expecting to walk down the street and get hit in the head by a moon rock. So I felt really stupid. I said, this is not, I don't know, TV related. Yes, Oprah Winfrey picked your book for you by the book show. I said, you gotta be shitting me. She said, no, I'm not shitting you. I said, Alice, I don't mean to be crass, but how many people are in that club of yours? She said, oh, we have at least 1 million. So I quickly do the, I said, holy shit, Alice, I'll be able to get my Sunday plum. And that's how we get. I'll answer your question. No, I want to finish the point about how important and beautiful and incredible it is when she chooses your book. So that 9th printing of 20,000, that very day went from being another 20,000 to now we need another 900,000. And I have renamed my kids Oprah, and they're all good with it.
So, Jenna, I wanted to ask you, you of course were named a favorite woman writer in the Oprah universe and on Oprah.com. When I first saw that, I flinched a little bit because of that whole notion of, are we marginalizing women? And you're a writer, you're not a woman writer. But then again, coming from Oprah world, there's nothing more powerful important resonant, than being a woman who thinks and who's introspective and talented and all of that stuff. So to me, and I hope to you, it is the highest praise. Tell me about that experience for you.
I don't mind being a woman writer. I just want to know where all these men who cook and do laundry. This would be good. You can compliment with me. I will talk about it, but I just want to say how honored I am to be in this company, that I kind of crept into the Oprah thing through the back door. I didn't get the call, and I haven't been on the show, although I have tried mightily hard, to the point where with my first book, Those Who Save Us, I gave it to a reader whose brother was in jail, and the jailed brother had a cousin who worked for Oprah's stylist. She was supposed to leave the book on her dressing table so that it would pick up. And I know a lot of the writers out there are probably like, yeah, I've done that. So yeah, it was kind of like the moon rock experience, because I was trying to attract the moon rock to hit me on the head. And every book club I've been to, and I've been to over 1,000 book clubs in Boston area alone, they really did build that book up and loft it. I have said to them all, if you can get me on Oprah, you can all come to Chicago with me, we'll all go shopping together. Okay. So, but when Jen asked me, did I want to be on this panel with Andre and Wally and Richard, we're on a first name basis, just like crazy. Lucy, I kind of had the same feeling I did when I found out Those Who Save Us, my first book was on the New York Times list, that it was a terrible mistake, and at any moment somebody was going to call me and retract it. And so I felt very unworthy, and at the same time I was like, take this opportunity away from me when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. So even though I never got the call, I'm really happy to be here with these guys whose work I so love and admire. And I told my agent I was having like a little bit of verklempt-ness about it, which is very unlike me, because I love to speak in public. And she said, well, just tell the truth. She's French, she doesn't have speech impediment. That's like my French accent. She hates when I do this, but that's how she sounds. She was like, just tell the truth, that you love these guys and you have other books. I have seen them in your apartment. I'm totally right, thinking you're doing laundry, and now that I know this, you're coming over, honey. So, the way this worked for me, it really was a sort of a backward thing. I was on Twitter one day procrastinating. I think that we're talking about validation. For me, validation has been, I both want to live up to, the success of the first book and the reviews of the second book, but it also makes me think, well, when I'm a really old lady, I'll still be a New York Times bestseller, so now I'm going to go shopping and go on Facebook and go on Twitter. So it's just a terrible time sink, but every once in a while you find out good stuff. Because somebody wrote to me on Twitter, a reader, and said, hey, did you know you're one of Oprah's top 30 women writers? And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, here's the link. And I clicked on the link, and I flicked through this portrait gallery of women I could fall on my knees if I ever was in the same room with them. In fact, once I was in the same room with Ann Patchett, and I was like, oh, let me just be happy I love you so much. So it was like Ann Patchett and Toni Morrison and Barbara Kingsolver, and I'm flicking through, and then all of a sudden there's me. And my book, Those Who Save Us. So I called my agent, and I was like, what is this joke now? Somebody put me in Oprah.com, is this like a mock-up? What is this? And she's like, it is no joke. And I always know something good has happened because she has a sort of Judith Krantz villainous voice anyway, and when something really good happens, she sounds like James Bond. She's like, it is no joke, it is a very good thing. So that's what happened.
That's lovely. I was mentioning to Wally backstage, we've only just met, but I was working with a charity a few years ago where we were trying to figure out how to make some money for underserved communities of kids who need to have dance instruction. And so we were looking to prominent people, famous people, to do cool things with t-shirts that bore the logo of the organization. And I was talking with people I knew, or talking to people I knew, to talk to people they knew, to see who we could get to do this. Talked to my great good friend Sarah Nelson, who's the editorial director of Amazon.com. She worked with us at O for a while. She said, oh, I'll ask Wally. Well, Wally said yes, produce a t-shirt in about 4 seconds. And when that happened, I thought, lovely, but also just like the sense of paying it forward. You've been an Oprah Book Club author twice, which is unreal. And your generosity is well known in so many areas. And tell us about that being struck by lightning twice experience.
When I got call number 2, my novel, I Know This Much Is True, was just being published. In fact, I was in New York doing media, and I was in my hotel room talking with the editor of Book of the Month Club, and they were going to do a feature on the book, and I get a call, and Oprah had called while she was reading I Know This Much Is True, and she said, hi Wally, this is not the call, I'm just reading the book, and I just want to know, are the bunnies on the little girl's pajamas, they're symbolic, right? And I said, yeah, and she goes, I knew it. So now,
She's such a tease.
oh yeah. So about 6 weeks go by, and now the book is just out, and I get the call, another call on my phone in my hotel room while I'm talking to, the Book of the Month lady. Anyway, I know from the first experience that it's a very closely held secret that you're going to be picked, and you have to be quiet about it until Oprah makes the announcement on TV. And so, what do I do? It's Oprah, and she says, Wally, guess what? You're going to be the son of a bitch, hey! And I said, oh, thank you, ma'am, but I'm in the middle of an interview right now. Could you call me back in 10 minutes? And she laughed, and she said, I'll call you back in 15. I said, okay. So,
You had to hide it.
Yeah. So I, finished the interview. I walk the woman out to the bank of elevators, and then as soon as those elevators door close, I go running back to my room, only to realize that I have locked myself out. Pushing the elevator buttons, nothing's coming, so I start running down. It must have been like 12 flight of stairs, and I get a substitute room key. I go running back upstairs, and I sat and I waited by that phone for, I think, about an hour. I don't know what the hell else she had to do. But anyway, when she did call back, before she called back, I was thinking, well, if she never calls back, I'm just not mentioning it to my editor. I won't say a thing. And then, so yeah, that was, I did feel, I scratched my head and I thought about all of the writers who are way better than I am. Why did this happen to me, not only once, but then twice? And so I wanted to, I really did feel like I wanted to give back. If karma was gonna, karma and Oprah, I'm not sure that they're not the same. If that was not gonna shine on me, then it was, I had to give back. So I started working I was on leave of absence from my high school teaching job, and I started working in a daycare, just doing some volunteer work. Picking Cheerios off of kids' shirts. And I did that for a while, and then I get a call from the women's prison in Connecticut, and a woman there said, there have been 2 suicides here, and there have been several more attempts. They were really putting the screws to the women down there. They had paramilitarized the guards. Now there were these guys walking around with dogs and so forth. And she said, would you come? And I didn't want to go, but I said I felt that obligation. And so I agreed to go one time for 90 minutes, and at the end of that 90 minutes, I was packing up, and the scariest woman in the whole class raises her hand, and she said, thanks for coming. And I said, oh, you're welcome. And she said, are you coming back? And it was only because I'm such a damn chicken that I said, okay, I'll come, that was 15 years ago, and And I mean, I have gotten, so, you know, you give a little and you get so much back.
I just want to, you know, say how proud I am of us, our magazine, Oprah, for shining light on such an unbelievably talented group of people. It's just, she has unerring instincts, as I said, and she knows talent when she sees it, and it's all up here. It's really exciting. And now I'd like to open up the discussion to all of you. I'm sure you have questions and comments. Please don't feel that you have to make it Oprah related. I'm sure there are all kinds of things you'd like to ask these four masters of their craft. So please, questions? In the room? Anybody?
So Wally, do you miss teaching high school?
Do I miss teaching high school? God, I just did it this afternoon. I met with a group of high school kids at the Grog, at the upper reaches of the Grog, and we had a really good time.
Did you get them drunk?
Vicky was there. I wasn't quite sure why I was getting her. Yeah, well, Vicky was doing Jello shots, but. Do I miss high school teaching? I don't, because I still get my teaching fix from the women at the prison. But I am, pretty soon I'm going to go back to my high school where I, not only that I attended, but also where I taught for 25 years. And where, this is a little announcement, I'm sneaking into the answer to the question, but my little Christmas book, Wishin' and Hopin', is going to be made into a film, and they're going to film it partly at the high school where I taught.
Oh,
Nice. Yeah, so that'll be cool. And so I'm going back home to high school.
Yeah.
Leslie.
Well, I have a somewhat mundane question, but still one I'm interested in knowing. What are you all reading right now, or that you've read here recently that you've loved?
Jenna, Wally, and Russo.
I am reading actually Dirty Love and I'm not being a Suka fan either. I just drove here from the Midwest where I've been living for the past 3 years. And I was like, oh, it's research. I get to listen to another Andre Dubus book, and he kept me company all the way across Ohio, which was really, really long, and Pennsylvania. It was, again, I'm sorry, this is probably maybe embarrassing for you, but it's so nice to be in a car reading something I want to read as opposed to something I have to read for research or for business purposes, and just to be alone with the person's voice, the author's voice, which literally is his voice because he read his own book, and the interiority of fiction, of getting into people's heads in such an intimate way, made me remember why I wrote fiction in the first place, which is just to etch a character in circumstance and to see the character interacting with circumstance. So it's delightful to read really good fiction. It just really is.
Well, Jenna can come to our town anytime. I just say, I'm just gonna keep talking, but thank you. I just read a beautiful book of poetry by Laura Kashishki called Space in Chains, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award a couple years ago, and I really do read poetry every morning. And it's just an incredibly beautifully written book. And another one is Euphoria, Lily King's fourth novel coming out in June. It's really a gorgeous book.
I can't remember the title, but I remember the author's name. It's Jessamine West. Anybody know?
And then we read.
That's it. The men we read.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jessamine Ward.
Ward.
Yes, from
Jessamine
the Blum,
West was the other.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
Oh, not the.
It's a memoir.
Yeah. Very
Doctors.
powerful stuff. I've also read Amanda Copland's The Orchardist. It's a novel, but it's a first novel. Really, really good. She doesn't read like a first novelist at all. Those are two that come immediately to mind.
I'm reading, interesting because Jenna mentioned Ann Patchett earlier. I'm on a real Ann Patchett kick right now because my wife serves on the board of an alternative high school in Portland, Maine, where we are, 2 schools actually. And every year we bring somebody up. Actually, Andre came up a few years ago and did an event for us. And so we're doing an event this year. Ann Patchett has graciously agreed to come up and do an event for us in Portland. So I got a little bit behind on her new book, a book of essays, which I don't normally read, sit down and read a book of essays that often. I seem to have so many other, fiction obligations. But I just read her new book of essays called "This is the Story of a Happy Marriage," which I cannot recommend to you highly enough. Especially the title story, and one of the best books that one of the best essays I've ever read about learning how to write, which is called "The Getaway Car." In that book is terrific. And I went back because I got behind. I love Ann's work, but I got behind, and I hadn't read State of Wonder yet. So I'm reading State of Wonder, which is just a clinic for all of you writers out there. The book is just a clinic on how to draw readers into a fictional world, so that it's just so completely that your own world really doesn't even matter anymore. So those are two highly recommended books from my recent show.
More questions, comments? What am I reading? A lot of manuscripts for me. Some of which are quite good. That's awesome. I am also reading Gary Steinegart's memoir, Little Failure, which is hilarious. Sorry. I'm reading Gary Steinegart's memoir, A Little Failure. Hilarious. It's really a great book. But as I was saying, off the mic here, a lot of manuscripts for the magazine. More questions, comments? Yeah.
So when a book hooks a reader, you read it in bed, you think about it during the day. When you can't read it, you kind of can't wait to get back to it. That's the consumer. What about the producer? What's it like writing in terms of, do you get something in you and you got to get it out till it's done? But some of these books take 5 years. So is it fun to write? Do you have to write? What is that like?
Good one.
Jenna?
Scott, right?
Well, you have a great memory.
You really want me to answer this?
I do.
I'd say the short answer is yes. But as I said earlier in a different panel, I'm not capable of giving a short answer. I also said in that panel, so forgive me if you were there, but I feel like when I'm writing, I'm sort of like a very low-level autistic, because that's all I can think about. And I'll give you an example. My fiance came into the room last week and said, "What are we having for dinner?" And I was involved in thinking about the book that I'm working on presently, and I said to him, "Did you actually see the Watergate hearings? Because I know you were old enough to watch Watergate. What do you remember about that?" And this is kind of like what he's going to hear about for the next 3 to 5 years. So I really feel, and I'm sure you gentlemen can speak to this, it's a little bit different once you have had maybe some commercial success, because before, when I wrote my debut novel, of course nobody cared that I was writing except for my mom and my friends. And that was perilous and terrible feeling, but at the same time I had total artistic freedom and was able to devote all my time to it, and I was possessed by it. I was utterly possessed by it. I was so possessed by it that the book was set in Germany, and I would go to teach my classes at Boston University, and I would speak to my students in German, which I didn't even really speak. So I was really into it. And for 5 years, all I talked about with my friends was Nazis, and they were like, "When are you going to be done with this? Because we were ready to move on." There are others like that, and I wrote about storm chasing, and they're like, "Go back to the Nazis, we were perfect." But I think now the danger for me is that when I start on a book, I don't really start a book because that's too scary. I like to sort of test drive short stories and see which of them resonates with me enough to want to spend the next 4 or 5 years with it. But the problem is once I tell that to my terrifying and awesome agent, she's like, "Oh, that is clearly the book that is going to be the next book," and then it's like sold, and you have to write that. And if you're lucky, you can kind of fall in love with your own work. And so I feel like the process has become a little bit different now that there's like actually a midwife waiting to catch the baby, as opposed to me like having it in a shack by myself howling in the woods.
Write that down. But you know, I do think there's a danger, isn't there a danger to anticipating that midwife? I try, I mean, I'm grateful for midwife, and may she not drop our baby and give it a good bath, but Scott, for me, man, I try not to ever think about the fact that I'm writing a book, and I try not to ever think about it when I'm not writing. So I try to take it the way you would an inappropriate sexual impulse towards a friend. And I'll just say that out loud. And just kind of supplement it, push it down where it should go, and leave it there. And but so what I'm saying is, like, I'll get these urges to talk about my work or to think about it, and I just push it right back down into the psyche, and I do not talk about it. I don't think about it. I don't ever. It's just so damn private for me. And I try to forget that I'm writing a book, and I try to forget there's a publisher waiting for it, and I try to forget that my kids' tuition is entirely dependent on my fiction of the goddamn thing. And I just try to dream it. But every now and then, you know, I'll be driving in my truck, jumping in a coffee, and I'll think, oh shit, that's right. And I'll just write a quick little line, you know, question mark, and it's like this inappropriate sexual impulse oozing out, and you touch your knee. Oh Jesus! And you just write knee question mark, and then I go back to work. Just making sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm getting a little afraid of him.
Wait till you come back to the house, Wally.
I took the seat the farthest away on
You're my dear friend.
I actually would like to circle back to to my Oprah experience to answer your question, Scott, and because it was as wonderful as this whole thing was. When that double ride on the roller coaster stopped, and I had to climb off and start a new novel, I was scared to death to do that. My agent at the time had dollar signs in her eyes, and suddenly, because of the sales of the first two, she got a contract for me that I didn't. It was so ridiculous that there's no way I'm going to be able to write a book that's worth anything like this. And so I struggled with it for over a year, and I kept thinking I was starting, and then I wouldn't start. I would throw it out. And after about a year, I went down to the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival. I was a speaker there, and I was in a bad state at that point. I was panicky. I was going to give my advance money back. I was going to, take back my leave of absence and go, go back to my homeroom and all that kind of. And so I was just sort of walking around aimlessly in New Orleans, this city that I had never been to before, and my walk took me to Jackson Square in the French Quarter, and there's this old church, the Cathedral of St. Louis, and I walked in there. I was the only person in the church, and I was in such a state that I went down to the front and I lit a candle and I knelt and I said, whoever, whatever you are, if you are, for all I knew, it might have been the ghost of Tennessee Williams. I didn't know. But I said, I'm really scared. Could you help me find a story? And then the next day I flew home and I started in earnest within a couple of days the novel that became The Hour I First Believed. And it did take me 9 years to write, and a lot of that time I was grappling with the fear of failure, fear of disappointing all these, readers that I had never had before. But that's the sort of the other side of the success thing. And you articulated it better than I.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I did. I struggled for a while. Yeah, I had to shoo out everybody else's expectations before I continue.
Of course, Rick, you faced a fair amount of fear writing a memoir after all of your novels. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, but I do want to go back to Scott, was it? Yeah, Scott. For me, excuse me, Lucy.
Sure.
As you like. When I was in college, it came to me that I was a very obsessive person by nature. There was a point where I discovered the pinball machine, a particular pinball machine at the bottom of the student union, and I shoved quarters into it one after another. And I got to the point where I was spending all of my meal ticket money down there in the basement, and I would just play until I was completely just sick at heart, soul sick. But I couldn't stop shoving the quarters in the machine. It dawned on me then that if I couldn't stop playing pinball, what would happen to me if I ever came under the influence of something? What would happen if I started doing drugs? If you can't quit pinball, you're probably not going to. What I'm getting at in the answer to your question of why you do this, writing came along for me at exactly the right moment, because obsessive compulsive disorder cuts a wide swath through my family. And I've never been really good at stopping an obsession. Once something is in me, I've never been able to get rid of it. I have been able to replace it at times. And for me, writing, when I discovered fiction writing, I had the same feeling in my hands, the tingling in my fingers, in my extremities. I had exactly the same feeling that I had at the pinball machine.
That's so great.
Except that this wasn't going to kill me, or I wasn't going to starve me. And I've always, David Mitchell, the British novelist, says that he thinks that writing and most art is a kind of controlled madness. And for me, doing this, being able to sit down and just revise a sentence, if you're an obsessive, revising is the thing that's so hard for a lot of writers is just the revising. Well, I just do that instinctively, just for fun, yeah. But for me, I've held on, since I discovered it, I've held on to writing as a lifeline, because I've gotten better at it. It's been a wonderful way to spend my hours, which I would have been spending some other much worse way, and I've just held on to it as a lifeline, because anything else wouldn't be nearly. I just have to do it. I have to do it, but just for health reasons. I don't. People say all the time, "Oh, I have to write," but that's not what I'm not using it in that general. I'm not using it in that general way. I think it keeps me out of the loony bin.
And aren't we glad?
Other questions?
Yeah, hi. I heard you speak earlier today, Richard, and Andre. Of course, we know each other, and I remember you as a young father crying one night because you couldn't afford diapers for your children, and you were really betwixt. I mean, you were torn up because you wanted so much to write, but you needed to work, and it was. I remember the struggles you were going through back then, and so I guess I wanted to say, like, I'm so glad Oprah found you, and you, Richard, too, and that you're celebrated this way. She is such a force for good in this world, and it strikes me that even a bestseller, as I understand it, only gets about 1.3% of the adult population. Fewer people are reading, from what I understand here, and I just wonder where. So it's terrific that we have wonderful writers, for those of us that really like it. But
downer. Ian is a dear friend of mine. Can I speak to this first? Because I'm just haunted. One of the things that I've noticed, because I'm both hopeful and despairing. The despairing part is that, you know, we all give a lot of talks all year long, and unless I'm at a university and they tend to be a captive audience who are forced to go. The median age seems to be about 57, right? There aren't a lot of people in their 20s at these things, or teens. And whenever I meet one who's, you know, clearly passionate about reading and writing, I just want to hold him or her and think, say, but can you tell 500,000 of your peers? But look, man, there has been an increase in literary reading by adult Americans as a result of e-book technology. And I'm not a fan of the whole thing, just because I love real books. But I personally don't care how someone reads a book I write. But people now, because they have the gadget, are downloading novels and they're reading them. So I don't think the book is ever going to die. I actually think there's more hope for readerships growing as a result of the internet. My biggest concern is what you ended with, Ian, which is, I do believe, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, that these gadgets are making us all attention deficit disordered and casting us in a trance. And if you've got people 12 to 20 whose brains are still developing to 25, you know, I'm afraid that, you know, we're short-circuiting a whole generation of readers who won't ever be drawn to staring at an object for 5 hours, absorbing a 400-page book in the bath. You know, it's hopping around, and so I have real concern. The good news is you need to read The Shallows by Nicholas Carr, because it's a really smart book about this. The good news is you walk away from those gadgets, the brain goes back to its beautiful, long, meditative organ that it is, you know, and I have more hope than not, because of live theater. We've had live theater for over 2,000 years. We still go to rooms where live actors are on the stage performing, and that hasn't died, and I don't think the book or reading is going to die either. And I'm holding on to that, goddammit.
I would also add, the other reason for optimism is that the young talent in the pipeline is just astonishing.
Yes.
I had the good fortune to judge a first novel contest a few years ago, and also to do an edition of Best American Short Stories where I was reading a lot of young writers' work. Recently went to the AWP just to talk to young writers, because I'm a member of the Authors Guild now, and was just talking to them about what their lives are like, people your age, Jenna, the talent in the pipeline is simply breathtaking, and I have to, you know, a lot of the access that used to be there when 3 of the 4 of us, you know, got into this business, there was an awful lot more structural support than young writers are having today, are getting today. But they're remarkably inventive about the way they're using technology, the Twitters and the Facebooks and all of that. They're remarkably innovative. They seem to find ways to support each other, you know, they continue to do it, and some of them you're beginning to know some of them by name, and some of them not yet, but you will. They're terrific. They're going to blow the top of your head off. So they're there. They're not going away.
I think it was a couple of years ago it came out in the New York Times. I still remember the headline. It's Your Brain on Fiction. And it was about these brain tests that they did. They measured people's brain waves when they were reading fiction and also when they were reading nonfiction. What they found was, and it was Emory University, and there were a couple of universities in Europe, and they came up with the same conclusion, that when people read fiction, their brains act in the same way as would the characters in that situation. So if you're being chased down the street and you're reading about being chased down the street, your brain acts similarly. And when nonfiction was read by the people in the study, that didn't happen. You know, there was not that sort of simulated feeling. And so to me, what that says is that fiction really helps to promote empathy. And that's a good thing. And yet, in our schools now, you know, it's all this core curriculum stuff. They're throwing out fiction in the, you know, in the curriculum, and you know, everybody's, you know, tweeting and, you know, all the texting and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm a little bit less optimistic about where it's all going. And I just wanted to say, in terms of gender differences, not only is the audience somewhere around the average of 57 years old, but at least in my readings, it's probably 80% female and maybe 20% male. I think probably having to do with the fact that I'm a fiction writer rather than a nonfiction writer. And lots of times I will hear guys say to me, well, yeah, I read your novel, but, you know, usually, I don't know why I suddenly turned southern. That's your agent. Your editor.
That's all right, Bubba.
No, but they'll say, you know, like, you know, I don't, you know, I read nonfiction, and you know, I feel like saying, yeah, because fiction is about those feelings, and you know, they're kind of scary. You got a big dick, so you got to be.
You just said that in church. That's me knocking under the platform.
Thank you. One more, last question.
Can the panel talk a little bit about what inspires you to write?
I think, my question for Wally, I just read your last one, I really enjoyed it. I'm an art teacher myself, so are you interested in art? Are you an artist yourself?
Which question should I answer?
Okay, can
Yeah.
you repeat the question? Because
Yeah.
He was asking what inspires you.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. This woman, tell me your name.
I'm Debbie.
Debbie says, you know, she teaches art. My novel is about art and the creation of art. Am I interested in art? Yes. In fact, I never would have guessed when I was a kid that I was ever going to be a writer, because I didn't much like to read. Sorry, I didn't much like to write, but man, I loved to draw. I was drawing all the time, and I realize now, when I look at the long arc of my life, that was my leg up into becoming a writer, because I think it's all connected somehow in the brain. But yes, and to answer your question, sir, what inspires me lots of times, it's visual stuff. Lots of times it's going to a museum and seeing a painting, or it could be, you know, something that I see on the street. It could be a photograph in a newspaper. So yeah, the visual stuff is what gets me. It could be a movie too.
How about you, Jenna?
Very few things inspire me to write, unfortunately, which is why I put out a book like every 5 to 10 years. I have often had the experience that I'm sure you've had, where I'm at a party or some gathering and somebody will come up to me and say, I have this great story for you, you have to write it. And I, after about 20 years, have figured out a sort of tactful way to say, I'm sorry, I don't really write that way. I'm a very inefficient writer. I write about emotional situations that to me are sort of insolvable, like emotional problems that I'm trying to put my arms around, and if there's no solution for the problem, then I write a book about it. And so my second book is about bipolar disorder and what it does to people, and I have watched it wreak havoc in the lives of people of my family, and there was no processing that in any logical way, so I wrote a book about it. And so I'll take an emotional conundrum and marry it with a context that I'm really interested in. And so I think of this as being like the sort of tinder that I carry around with me all the time. Those ideas are there. The pressure to write about something emotional that is, you know, sort of pressing on me is always there, and I'm always interested in the context of my books. But then there needs to be some sort of spark. And it can be anything from just like an inciting into a conversation I have with somebody, or often it's other fiction. Like I read a short story. I read a lot of short stories when I'm trying to get inspired, because it is sort of a monkey see, monkey do thing. I think, oh gosh, that's a really good piece of short fiction. That's not as scary as writing a book. I can do that. You know, like Robin Black's If I Loved You, I Would Tell You This. I read that and I went out in the backyard and wrote a short story immediately and, sort of started growing it into something. So reading really good fiction often inspires me to put the match to that tinder that I carry around.
How about you, Rick?
I just never have, I don't know where it comes from, but I'm always full of shit. There's no shortage. There's just no shortage. There never has been. I don't know if that's inspiration.
Andre, you want to play us off?
Oh, God. Well, I would make you go further, because what I know about you is that you actually have too much to write about, is what I hear you say. That you constantly get interested in human situations you like to explore. You only write one book every few years, right?
Yeah.
I do have this belief that there's more, we have too much to write about. It's never that we don't have nothing to write. We have too much, we get bottlenecked. What's your first name?
Stuart.
Hey, Stuart. I think we're talking about microscopic daily inspiration and then macroscopic inspiration. I do read poetry every morning to kind of get in the mood for that writing, which I feel like writing now, but I won't tomorrow morning. It is like working out. You start doing it, and you're glad you do it. E.L. Doctorow said, for me, the writing creates more writing. But in a macroscopic way, what gets me started on a project, whether it's a short story, novella, or a novel, is always human beings. And what I love about writers, what I love about these guys, and I'm getting to love this lady too, is that writers are interested in people, and you know what? So are readers. There's a wonderful line from Tim O'Brien from his essay, The Magic Show. He said, writers tend to be the kind of people who want to enter the mystery of things. But see, that's true of readers too. We want to enter into lives we'll never live. We only get one, damn it all. But if you're a reader, you get 5,000. And we can only write a book every 9 or 5 or 4 years. I mean, it takes me 4 to 5 usually. But I love trying to step into the private skin of another human being. And it's so goddamn hard to do well and without faking it and without forcing it and without thinking about, if Oprah's going to like it. Believe me, that's one of the challenges. Once she likes one, you bring it, Oprah doesn't like that word, but you must kill that part of you, and she would want us to. Because it's all about the character. So for me, what always inspires me are other human beings, and, frankly, people in trouble. And guess what? Everybody in this room is in some kind of trouble, because that's normal. And everybody, the older cultures know that. We Americans get all fucked up. Oh my God, I gotta get fixed. No, you don't. How about celebrating the fact you're in trouble? Let's just work through it. So what inspires me is human trouble and trying to paint it honestly, and I never get tired of it. And if I live 500 years, it's not long enough. And I won't live 500 years. Thank you.
On that note, this has been thrilling. Thank you so much for being here.